Ladies and gentlemen, hit subscribe to this channel right now. DOJ files intent to appeal for ruling that disqualified Lindsey Halligan. To my super chat, by the way, thank you so very much. We'll give you a shout out during the live stream for your super chats. And if you want to talk about anything regarding the James Comey case or the conspiracy statutes that the Florida grand jury eventually will level against a whole bunch of people, almost certainly Madam Secretary, Comey, Brennan, and a whole lot of other individuals. We can talk about a lot of things in terms of politics via super chat, so you can ask me questions, but also Paul Bartlett in Australia. I can't thank you enough, sir. Thank you so much, my friend. Greatly appreciated. As always, Paul, thank you. To my super chat, thank you. Let's get it started. They're appealing the Lindsey Halligan decision. It was a judge that decided that Ms. Halligan was not appointed appropriately. That is not the belief of the DOJ, and it's not the belief of Pam Bondi. DOJ files intent to appeal ruling. This is Lindsey Halligan, and we're going to get to Lindsey Halligan in a second, but I want you to hear Pam Bondi. The DOJ is very confident that the Comey case will be back, and he'll have to be indicted again. Number one, the indictment for perjury is on pause now because of the ruling pertaining to Lindsey Halligan. The conspiracy statutes, the indictments in Florida, the Florida grand jury is meeting now. The indictments on conspiracy statutes, because Russiagate was a whole bunch of people conspiring to lie to the American public. It was not only a hoax, it was a grandiose lie. There was never, not a shred of evidence, and we're not talking about intelligence or a hunch or a belief or suspicion. There was never evidence that Trump committed any crime, yet they leveled the United States government and created a new Cold War, this McCarthy-era Red Scare, and said that an incoming president was working with another country without a shred of evidence. They literally used a Steele dossier also, which was purchased by Trump's direct political rival. So, I mean, the evidence was literally purchased. They had nothing on Trump. That's why when they keep saying when the files come out, what does Trump have to hide? They would have leaked any information pertaining to that Democratic donor and Trump if it was criminal in nature. They had nothing on Trump for the past 10 years. That's why he won twice. Thank God. Hit subscribe to this channel. This is Pam Bondi.
Lonnie, you had a follow-up, and then we've got to get outside and get to... Sure.
So I can ask, what happens to U.S. Attorney Halligan now? Will she remain in her position while the appeals process plays out? And does that threaten to upend other cases in the office if you guys don't win on appeal?
It does not. We have made Lindsey Halligan a special U.S. attorney, so she is in court. She can fight in court just like she was, and we believe we will be successful on appeal. And I'll tell you, Lindsey Halligan, I talked to all of our U.S. attorneys, the majority of them around the country, and Lindsey Halligan is an excellent U.S. attorney, and shame on them for not wanting her in office. Thank you all.
So again, they won on a procedural issue. It was a Pyrrhic victory because they're just going to indict Comey again, almost certainly, because the statute of limitations doesn't end on conspiracy. They've written books. They've all conspired up until, they're continuing to do it. They're continuing to lie. That will happen in 26. The perjury, if he was indicted for perjury within the statute of limitations of 5 years, and there was a procedural issue with Lindsey Halligan. Here's federal prosecutor Lindsey Halligan, but they can still re-indict Comey, according to legal experts. But check this out. This is Lindsey Halligan talking about the Mar-a-Lago raid. She is extremely intelligent and, very, very on point in terms of her analysis, political analysis, which is why I think that the judge or the court or Comey's legal team, they definitely don't want her involved.
For President Trump, and she joins me now. So, Lindsey, you were there on premises when this went down?
Hi, Mr. Waters. Yes, I was there. I arrived at around 11 a.m.
This must have been shocking since you guys were cooperating. How did it go down?
Yeah, that's what was shocking to everyone on board. Trump's team has painstakingly gone through every single document at Mar-a-Lago in the storage room, put a padlock on the storage room, did everything that the Department of Justice asked them to do, and they didn't care. They still went in with a search warrant and just swarmed all over the property. I was banned from going in. I told them that I'm his attorney. There was another attorney at the property as well. We weren't even allowed inside the building at all, not even in areas where they weren't searching.
So when you guys were dealing with them in the months prior, they were coming down and looking into boxes, and you guys were saying what? Like, take whatever you want, this is what's in here, this is what's in here, what are you looking for? Like, what was the conversation?
Right, it was an open door policy pretty much. There was no issue with document compliance whatsoever. We had a good rapport, a good working relationship with the Department of Justice, and they still executed this search warrant.
So now they're saying, oh, we're going to make the warrant public, we're going to make this stuff public. What do you expect to see?
Well, they're actually kicking it to President Trump's team to evaluate, whether President Trump's team will be objecting to the motion to unseal the records or not. We didn't get much information from Merrick Garland other than his proud announcement that he personally signed off on this raid. But he did also allude to the fact that under the Constitution, no one is above the law. However, the power to prosecute people criminally rests exclusively with the executive branch. That means it's up to the sitting president to ensure that our criminal system does not unravel into retaliatory or political prosecutions of former presidents and other government officials. Just imagine what if it is now protocol for a new president of the United States to prosecute his or her predecessor.
Yeah, I mean, Trump gets reelected in 2024. He sends in armed agents to Jill's closet. Rifles around the Rehoboth Beach vacation house, goes into Hunter's house with some gloves on, obviously, because, you never know what you're going to find. Yeah, they've opened up a whole Pandora's box. It's sick, it's sad, and this should have never happened. Thank you so much for joining us, and just keep us posted on what the latest developments are. Thank you.
So Lindsey Halligan knows exactly what was going on. She knows the lawfare. She knows exactly why they raided Mar-a-Lago. They didn't have to. Trump never committed a crime with classified data. They always try to make everything relative. So they have classified data breaches to the point where James Comey even wrote the Comey letter because Huma Abedin forwarded classified data from Clinton's computers, which were on servers hidden from the U.S. government that had top secret intelligence illegally transferred onto them, almost certainly. We know SAP Intel it's documented that it was transferred onto Clinton's servers. It's impossible for that to happen legally. But you have Biden with classified data breaches, like serious. He was a senator. Clinton was a Secretary of State. They did not have the power to declassify documents. Trump had the power to declassify documents. That's it. He could have done so verbally as well. And so there was zero reason to go into Mar-a-Lago, zero reason. But of course, they make a mockery of classified data with private servers, but Trump, oh my God. And notice how the residence of former officials, aside from Bolton, but like former secretaries of state, presidents, they're never touched. But Mar-a-Lago, yes, they made an example of. And they catapulted Trump, thank God, to the presidency. But this is Lindsey Halligan. She's very intelligent, very good, attorney. And so it was a procedural issue. If they don't re-indict, they'll likely indict Comey again. But if they don't, then they'll just wait until after the new year. And then the grand jury in Florida will start indicting a whole bunch of people.
Specifically, are there other items that you can name besides the passports that were taken that should never have been taken?
That's the thing. We don't know exactly what they took. We've asked multiple times for a real inventory, description of what was taken. But the inventory list they gave us is borderline worthless. It doesn't say where the documents were located, what specifically was taken. Now we know they seized his passports, 2 of which were expired, and they gave them to his attorneys today, so he'll have them soon. But we have real concerns in terms of whether they were right to take certain things. The Department of Justice is not communicating with us as to what the evidence is and what their intentions are, but we will continue to try to get to the bottom of it. The Department of Justice clearly has different rules for Donald Trump than anyone else out there. The whole system truly does suffer when they write different rules for different people.
Why were you and another attorney of the president denied access to watch what was going on, and who specifically were they asking to turn off the surveillance footage?
They didn't give us a reason for preventing us from going inside the property. I even tried to get in the property just for sake of air conditioning because it was like 95 degrees outside, and they were there from 10 a.m. to 6:30, I think. But they wouldn't even let me stand inside the property where they weren't searching. They asked President Trump and I think his managers to turn off the surveillance, which they didn't. Right.
Okay. We appreciate you being with us. Thank you so much, President Trump. Lindsey, thank you. Hey, Sean.
So they're appealing it right now. The issue, ladies and gentlemen, is that President Trump in 2026, he has to address what was done to him. I mean, if he doesn't address what was done to him, even with all the great things he's doing with tariffs and the economy is going to rebound, but he has to address the lawfare. If he doesn't address the lawfare, there's zero incentive for the wonderful, morally superior, wonderful liberal Democrats to stop doing what they've been doing to the Trump family.
The DOJ and Pam Bondi ready to make their next move as a federal judge dismisses the criminal indictments against former FBI Director James Comey and New York Attorney General Letitia James, saying that the prosecutor was not legally appointed.
We'll be taking all available legal action, including an immediate appeal, to hold Letitia James and James Comey accountable for their unlawful conduct. We have made Lindsey Halligan a special U.S. attorney, so she is in court. She can fight in court just like she was, and we believe we will be successful on appeal.
Republican political strategist and lawyer Katie Zachariah joins me now to discuss. Katie, how can the DOJ fix this?
Well, thanks, Todd, and good morning. Look, we're looking at a situation where you have 28 United States Code Section 546 that applies in this situation, and the language is clear. The U.S. Attorney under Section, or the Attorney General under Section A can appoint a U.S. Attorney, as Pam Bondi did, and with Lindsey Halligan, and the district court is trying to argue this very vague language under Section D of the 28 United States Code that the district court should have appointed a judge rather than Pam Bondi, but it's vague. It says the district court may appoint a U.S. attorney in the absence of, the attorney general doing so. Todd, this judge is Judge Curry. Clinton judge is trying to run the clock on statute of limitations, protect Comey and James, and I think Pam Bondi will succeed on appeal.
Okay, you mentioned Comey. Let's start with him. Obviously, he is celebrating. Take a listen.
I'm grateful that the court ended the case against me, which was a prosecution based on malevolence and incompetence, and a reflection of what the Department of Justice has become under Donald Trump, which is heartbreaking. I know that Donald Trump will probably come after me again, and my attitude is going to be the same. I'm innocent, I am not afraid, and I believe in an independent federal judiciary.
Okay, Katie, you alluded to it.
So almost certainly Comey and Brennan and all of these, so many others, they set up and framed Trump. It's pretty obvious. You'd have to be a complete imbecile to think that they were independent or that they didn't know the Steele dossier was purchased by Hillary Clinton. Okay, they're very good at lawfare, and there's an entire media apparatus defending them. Just like when he found seashells. I mean, this is the same person who found seashells in the formation of 8647, which is almost the anniversary of Butler, Pennsylvania. I mean, it's not only is so shameful, and it's unbelievable. It's just unbelievable. But let's continue.
Earlier, the statute of limitations is hanging over this case. And let's say even if Pam Bondi and the DOJ win on appeal, the time for bringing a case against Comey is way past. The Department of Justice waited to the very last minute to bring a case. So how do you overcome that challenge and refile against Comey?
Well, it was dismissed without prejudice, and there's going to be an opportunity to cure this, right, Todd? So either the DOJ is going to be able to argue that Lindsey Halligan is effectively there, or they're going to perhaps get a U.S. attorney that can sign off on this and be legitimate. I think there are a number of avenues that can go down. The argument that is, I think, more clear is that the language is vague, and the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, did follow procedure and appoint a U.S. attorney. And look, isn't it nice that they're arguing that Comey and James get this nice due process and procedural protection that was not afforded to President Trump, and all of a sudden now they're claiming fairness and due process? Todd, it's very difficult to watch the weaponized system continue to protect these people.
Yeah, it's such a great point, because a due process only applies to Democrats and illegal immigrants, which technically don't get full due process afforded citizens. But when it comes to Republicans, of course, no due process afforded. As for Letitia James, she released a statement saying the following, quote, "I am heartened by today's victory and grateful for the prayers and support I've received. I remain fearless in the face of these baseless charges as I continue fighting for New Yorkers every single day." Hypothetical here, Katie. When it comes to her.
So they tried to stop Trump from winning, but it didn't work. They deceived the country. I mean, Letitia James was not part of what Comey and Brennan and others did. Okay. Russiagate was a hoax. There was not a shred of evidence that pointed to Trump working with Russia, because Hillary Clinton's campaign wanted to elevate President Trump. So how on earth could the greatest adversary we have and Clinton's campaign both want to elevate Trump within their own emails? And then when they lost, oh my God, it was interference, collusion. Then you have Letitia James. She lost the case, or was it Alvin Bragg lost the case? No, Letitia James lost the case, the $500 million thrown out because Trump allegedly inflated his net worth, which was completely absurd. Even Deutsche Bank was like defending Trump. The alleged victim here, Deutsche Bank, was literally defending Trump, saying, yeah, we'll do business with him again. He's very wealthy, and he's part of world history, not just U.S. history. And Mar-a-Lago is probably $1.5 billion, not the 15 or 17 million that New York stated it was worth. Then they go, it's like we can go on forever. It was a tax assessment. Well, why would you use a tax assessment? And then you have PolitiFact. The court didn't appraise Mar-a-Lago at $15 million. It was a tax assessment. Yeah, the court decided they would use the tax assessment instead of what the $1.5 billion that Mar-a-Lago is worth. I mean, it's like unbelievable, the disingenuous nature of what's been going on. Like, if President Trump, here's the issue. If President Trump's DOJ, and they're on the case, they will address the issue. They'll address the double standard, the lawfare. They'll address all the attempts at undermining democracy. I mean, I don't usually speak in that manner. I've never talked about undermining democracy. Okay, democracy, a republic, was not undermined by Trump. It was undermined by the people who lied about President Trump and continue to do so. Trump was never working with Russia, ever. He never committed a campaign finance violation. That's going to be overturned. And he's a two-time president because everything they said about him, everything they tried to do, was all nonsense, all fabricated. But the Clinton campaign and the DNC purchased a Steele dossier. That is going to be, that's going to lead directly to indictments all throughout 2026. So 2026, ladies and gentlemen, I mean, subscribe to this channel. Be here for the live streams. I'm building slowly but surely H.A. Goodman's other channel. It's going to be a very interesting year, God willing, an amazing year for the country. Politically, President Trump is going to address the lawfare leveled at him.
Her case, should the DOJ go through with an appeal that could drag on and on and on? Or should they just say, we'll start over with regard to James, refile the case, different attorney, because there's no statute of limitations issues with regard to her case? Your thoughts?
Well, I would first go the initial avenue that Attorney General Pam Bondi is going, which is appeal both, and then maybe bifurcate them or separate them and go after Letitia James separately. However, I think right now the argument still stands that the ambiguity exists in Section D of the United States Code in 28 U.S.C. 546. So I think that she goes forward and argues legitimate appointment. Lindsey Halligan should be there, and she has the right to be in this court and fight this case.
In case you had any question whether Katie Zachariah was a lawyer when she started citing code sections, she threw in a bifurcate in there. Now you know for sure Katie Zachariah is a licensed attorney. Katie, thanks so much for getting up with us. We appreciate it.
So, if Lindsey Halligan is assigned back to the case, and an appeals court says, yeah, you can't throw this case out because the DOJ was not only involved in the case, the DOJ appointed Lindsey Halligan within a certain time frame. And it was thrown out because they said, well, the time frame wasn't appropriate. It's like, well, you're talking about the DOJ likely knows more about the procedural issues than a judge. Who knows? But maybe there's another element to this that media has overlooked, which is what you just heard right now from the legal expert.
We just got our hands on the Comey indictment, former FBI director indicted in the Eastern District of Virginia. He's charged with 2 counts, false statements within the jurisdiction of the legislative branch, that's testimony before Congress, and obstruction of a congressional proceeding. The indictment states, and it's only 2 pages long, that Comey willfully and knowingly, that's the intent standard, made a materially false, fictitious, and fraudulent statement in a matter within the jurisdiction of the legislative branch of the government of the United States by falsely stating to a U.S. senator during a Senate Judiciary Committee hearing that he had not authorized someone else at the FBI to be an anonymous source in news reports. That was regarding an FBI investigation. Congresswoman, this is big news. Many of us expected it. I think it's long overdue. But nevertheless, a lot of your colleagues tonight are saying, see, now Trump's weaponizing the Justice Department. You're doing what you accused others of.
Elliot in Australia, hello. To my viewers around the world, hello. So, don't you love the fact they go after Trump, they set him up and frame him. There's zero evidence at all, like zero evidence. We know from the declassified Director of National Intelligence documents, the Clinton Annex, the Durham probe Clinton Annex, that John Ratcliffe and Chuck Grassley and others declassified. We know that there are conversations of people. There's handwritten notes from Comey and Brennan stating that they were aware that Clinton had a plan to set up Trump. This is, of course, complete. Not if the tables were turned and Trump set up an incoming candidate, accused an incoming Democrat with a dossier he purchased. The New York Times, the Washington Post, CNN, MSNBC, they would never stand for it. It would never be accepted. But, of course, the tables are, there's a double standard. And the interesting thing is they think they could still get away with this completely fabricated, absurd these political stunts. They think they can just simply, continue to level these absurd allegations at Trump, and there's no legal repercussions. And if President Trump doesn't address these issues legally, if the DOJ does not address the issues of prior, DOJs and prior officials, it's that will undermine democracy. Let's continue.
Your response?
Laura, we've had the opportunity for so long to hold these people accountable, and Congress could have held him accountable, and they chose not to. So I'm glad that the Department of Justice has the backbone to actually bring a 5-year charge, potentially if he's charged with the 18 U.S. Code 1621. I think that's a statute for perjury. What he did was wrong, and I'd argue that what he did is largely also responsible for breaking ties that we have with foreign governments. So this guy's a crook. He's a criminal. He belongs in prison. I will firmly back the administration, and it's time that Congress stop talking about it and actually do it. We're in the majority. We need to act like it and back up the president.
Well, Charlie, over the years, Comey has had some very high-powered attorneys. Former U.S. Attorney Patrick Fitzgerald was on his team. I remember he went after Martha Stewart, Conrad Black. I mean, I have no use for him whatsoever. But nevertheless, he's had some big names backing him. The entire liberal legal establishment will be making the case for why Jim Comey is the standard bearer of the law. Charlie, how do you see this tonight?
The last vestiges of the swamp are going to rally around Jim Comey and make this the biggest fight. You think that the swamp cares about voters or Democrats or anything? No, this is who they're going to rally around. And it is true that Donald Trump is the poster child of a weaponized judicial system, but he's the victim of weaponized judicial system. He is the poster child as a victim of this. And there is no person in all of government who is more singularly responsible for that weaponization against Donald Trump than that man right there, Jim Comey.
I would say also, Brennan, Comey, Brennan, you have all the people that worked under them. You likely have individuals who are turning on them. They were also integral in all of this. Again, there are conspiracy statutes that will be leveled. 2026 is going to be a year of what Democrats and media always like that term. They don't use the term legal reckoning. They always said reckoning when, there was billions in property damage. Oh, it's a reckoning. It's like they just butcher the semantic. They butcher the English language. They mangle semantics all the time. Widespread chaos and mayhem is a reckoning, don't you know? But God forbid, that terrible day in January, I agree, was a terrible day. They have focused on one day for 4 years. They have ignored billions in property damage, and I agree with why people peacefully protested 5 years ago. I do. I agree with why people peacefully protested, but you had a building in flames, and CNN journalists just say, "Oh, well, it's fiery, but mostly peaceful." So it's the American political system. President Trump, thank God, has in a very interesting way has saved. Really, we needed President Trump for a number of reasons. But if he doesn't address the unmitigated, deceitful, disingenuous lawfare leveled at him legally, if he doesn't address it legally, that will truly be a problem or terrible for our republic.
All of the allegations about Donald Trump and Russiagate and all this kind of stuff, it was all political hackery until that man decided to take it and accept it as gospel and launch an investigation into a major party candidate at the height of a presidential election. And then he kept it going for years. And he should have known that it was all a hoax. And he kept doing it. And, we'll see. He's a very smart lawyer. Maybe he covered his tracks. Maybe he'll be able to get out of this. But I would like to see a jury of my peers decide whether or not he's guilty or not. I suspect I know how I would vote if I was on that jury, but they wouldn't let me on that jury.
Well, remember, they decided not to try for an indictment in the U.S. District Court in the District of Columbia, notoriously left-wing grand juries. They all indicted, they all went after Trump, and grand juries in the District of Columbia. So Eastern District of Virginia, the newly appointed U.S. attorney just took over, really a few days ago. after her predecessor had apparently declined to go after Comey, and there was a lot of frustration about him. But they got a new woman in, and she looked at the case, and she knew it well, and she decided, look, there's plenty to go on here, and it's time for someone to be held accountable. Congresswoman, it really seems at this point that James Comey's imperiousness may have finally caught up with him.
I think that you're right, Laura, and what I will tell you is that the DOJ needs to act aggressively because the American people are tired of a two-standard system in justice. And frankly, what he did largely is responsible for why there is a big political divide in this country, because they operated on a lie. He violated the president's literally civil liberties, and I would even argue on top of that, he leaked classified information. This guy should never be held or able to hold another government job forever for the rest of his life. And I would say that the Department of Justice has everything that they need to bring forward the charges, and they should throw the entire book at him. So that's a 5-year prison sentence, and he deserves every single day of it.
All right.
So they're looking to re-indict him. And again, this is just one crime that he committed, almost certainly. It's just one. So when people say, oh, no, believe me, if my viewers, I love you. I love you on this channel, around the world. Everywhere around the world, thank you so much. 2026 is going to be awesome. God willing, will be amazing for the country, for everybody watching. But Rome wasn't built in a day. And you know how passionate that I've been for years on these issues? Multiply that times 20,000, a billion. That's President Trump. And so Pam Bondi, she's doing a good job. I mean, President Trump has a lot more to worry about. He has bigger fish to fry than indicting people who tried to destroy him. It sounds terrible to say, but we're talking tariffs to bring American jobs back, enforcing immigration laws. Ensuring that illegal narcotics doesn't come into the country forever. These are on foreign policy on the world stage. He's part of world history. I'm not exactly. I'll say this, he has bigger fish to fry, but if he doesn't address the lawfare that wonderful, morally superior, highly educated Democrats have leveled against him, then that will tarnish our republic, our democracy. See, Democrats are so into these hilarious, Bush Republican terms, a danger to our democracy, our republic. You have far left that don't even like the American flag. That think it's like a symbol of, something terrible. So when they talk in these like lofty, grandiose terms, our republic, they don't even like our republic. You're not really a fan of the Constitution, really. You don't even like the Supreme Court because the Supreme Court consistently rules against Democrats, and then now they're writing it's illegitimate. So it's like they just look. You have one political side. The Bush Republicans wanted absolute control and power. Then that morphed into the modern day Democratic Party. And then President Trump came in and demolished both, made them both archaic and almost obsolete. So now the only thing propping up the Democrats is our media. That's really it. Hollywood's pretty much, they've completely lost influence, thank God. And we don't have to get into like, oh my God, what's taking place in Hollywood. But you have President Trump, if he doesn't address the lawfare in a rational, legal, constructive manner with people, indicting people who committed crimes. If you committed crimes, 2026 will be a year of indictments.
His contributor, GW University law professor. Jonathan, I want to play part of the moment from 2017 that may be at the center of all this. Watch.
Have you ever been an anonymous source in news reports about matters relating to the Trump investigation or the Clinton investigation?
Never.
Have you ever authorized someone else?
So that was a lie. Okay, let's continue.
At the FBI to be an anonymous source in news reports about the Trump investigation or the Clinton investigation?
No.
So that was another lie. That was another lie. The New York Times article that mentions it was either in late 2016, early 2017. I think the The issue here is the New York Times article that he leaked information to through a professor, his friend. Okay? That New York Times article has references an investigation into Anthony Weiner's laptop, which you'd probably need a hazmat suit to even touch. Because Uma Abedin was forwarding classified data to Anthony Weiner's laptop from Hillary Clinton's servers. That's why he wrote the Comey letter. But nobody knew about that real time. That wasn't public record. So I read like all of these, wonderful, highly educated, lawfare websites and blogs, and all these people are the DOJ is in over their head, and Comey is, he was technically telling the truth. Like, no, he wasn't. Nothing he said was truthful. Nothing. Even when he said something truthful, it was within an overall effort to deceive. So that's not truthful. But that New York Times article could not have known that the Comey letter was about Uma Abedin forwarding classified data. Why? Because it wasn't public record. He only fessed up to that with Dianne Feinstein a year later, or less than a year later. It wasn't public record when it was published. Therefore, almost certainly, Comey leaked the information. Like he leaked a lot of information. Like he leaked the Comey memos. I mean, it's unbelievable. But anyway, let's continue.
Professor Turley, what are your thoughts after looking over this very short document that we have before us?
Well, there's a crushing irony here because the two counts involve 18 U.S.C. 1001, 18 U.S.C. 1505. The first one is the very same crime that Comey made against Michael Flynn. And Comey gave speeches delighting crowds and explaining how what he did with Flynn wasn't exactly copacetic, that he just sent a couple of guys over and basically tricked him. And ultimately, they charged him on what many of us thought was a pretty thin indictment. So there is that irony. These two counts are mirror images, it appears, that they are alleging that the false statements also constituted the obstruction. But there is the interesting aspect to this is that, as you know, Laura, it's very, very hard to make out perjury cases against particularly sophisticated players like James Comey. This is a little different because they're just focusing on one statement, and that is, did you get someone else to leak information? That's true or false. And his aide and close associate, McCabe, said that he did order him or authorize him to make such a leak. We also know that Comey later admitted that he called a friend, which I'm presuming is Columbia professor Daniel Richman, to get information to the New York Times and to the media after he was fired. So this is a rather murky situation for Comey. He was, Comey is a careful player, but he's also a bit of a rogue operator when things get tense. He went rogue with the.
Then there's also the issue of people turning on Comey or Brennan or all the others. The assumption is that nobody is ever going to be a whistleblower or turn. But they already have people on record stating that Comey committed crimes, one of whom is Andrew McCabe, who also set up and framed Trump, almost certainly. We always have to say almost certainly. Potentially, like the Honorable James Comey says, potentially. He was asked by, I think, Jake Tapper on CNN years back when the Inspector General found that Andrew McCabe had lied. And then, of course, Andrew McCabe actually told the truth regarding Comey allowing him to leak information, because Comey was leaking information almost certainly himself. But then McCabe was fired, and the Inspector General asked McCabe, hey, you know what? Did Comey allow you to leak information? And McCabe said, yes, he did. If you look at the Inspector General report, Andrew McCabe and his attorneys tell the Michael Horowitz that, hey, you shouldn't trust Comey's account. Here's why. But then, of course, Michael Horowitz and the Inspector General's report, basically defended Comey. because it's the equivalent of a police department investigating its own police department and saying, oh yeah, we found that the police chief was not guilty, and oh, the underling was guilty. So Comey was always going to get the benefit of the doubt back then. But now we have handwritten notes, for example. So they have handwritten notes from Comey and Brennan admitting that they were setting up and framing Trump. I mean, so it's like, then you have John Ratcliffe, who tells Maria Bartiromo on Fox Business that basically 2026 is going to be a year of indictments. I mean, essentially, he alluded to that. And so the CIA, the FBI, it's run by Kash Patel, John Ratcliffe. The ODNI, instead of Clapper, it's Tulsi Gabbard. FBI, instead of Comey, it's Kash Patel. CIA, instead of Brennan, it's John Ratcliffe. So it's only a matter of time. I mean, yeah, it's probably better for the Department of Justice, for Trump, to have this momentary setback and this Pyrrhic victory for Comey and Letitia James, because the DOJ has to get its act together. They have to get their act together because Comey's brilliant at lawfare. All these people are brilliant at lawfare, but like law professor Jonathan Turley's saying, they're all, in a sense, rogue actors.
Clinton press conference, but he particularly went rogue when he was being fired. He removed material from the FBI.
Doge, yes, it'll be the year of the Exactly.
The Inspector General issued a scathing report saying that he violated the FBI rules. It did not find that he leaked classified information, but that information was FBI information he should never have removed. And then he himself admitted that he called up a friend to leak some information to the media. Now, that doesn't actually give him a pristine appearance. It suggests a foundation for this type of charge. None of us are happy about seeing political opponents charged. And so this case is going to remain controversial.
Nobody in media, though, cared that Trump was being targeted by his direct political rivals. I mean, this is like a high school class where it's like a John Hughes 80s movie. All the cool kids are the wonderful, morally superior liberal Democrats, and they're trying to pick on this like rebel, Trump, this orange-haired rebel, and he just keeps winning and winning, and they're so angry, and they're trying desperately to frame him and set him up, and then, he's the protagonist in a John Hughes movie. And finally, he wins in the end. And it's like the people who think they're on the right side of history, they're actually the baddies. It's like that British skit. Are we the baddies? Yes, you are actually. It's like they don't get it though.
The president truly despises this individual, and it appears to be a mutual feeling. But when you look at the charge itself, it is different from what some people might have thought. It's going to come down to whether Jim Comey is a leaker and a liar.
Did he or didn't he? Did he or didn't he? And did he have the willful intent? Which I think, going to that point, and there are two different issues here. He passed information off to his buddy at Columbia, Richmond, who was his old colleague, and then Richmond gave it to Michael Schmidt at the New York Times, and Michael Schmidt then would shape the coverage of this Russia collusion story with that information. Now, that in and of itself demonstrates what, Jonathan? That the FBI director was intimately involved in trying to guide the media to report the situation as he saw it. When that information presumably should not have been released under any circumstances.
Yeah, I'm actually not certain as to what is more unnerving for people in Washington. The fact that a political opponent of the president was indicted, which you can have legitimate concerns about, or whether more likely it's someone's being prosecuted for a leak. I mean, this city floats on a rolling sea of leaks. And, Comey and the FBI have been accused of leaking information when it serves their purpose. But this is something that occurs often in Washington. It's done with lethal effect. So I think that many people might find it even more unnerving that this is pretty much a leak prosecution. It's false statements, but it's really all about a leak.
And Jonathan, the president, I think we have the soundbite today in the Oval Office. There's a lot going on, executive orders. We had Erdogan's visit, but the president addressed this then potential indictment of James Comey. And this was Truth Social. He just actually posted this. Justice in America, one of the worst human beings this country has ever been exposed to is James Comey, the former corrupt head of the FBI. Today, he was indicted by a grand jury on 2 felony counts for various illegal and unlawful acts. He's been so bad for our country for so long. It is now at the beginning of being held responsible for his crimes against our nation. Make America great again. Well, that's President Trump. That was not what I was going to play, but that just came out, so we decided to read that off. Well, look, everyone knows President Trump has no use for James Comey, and Comey really did enormous damage to the United States and to the public's trust in the FBI over the years, and wanted Donald Trump in prison for something that was totally false, and has never apologized for it, has never shown any remorse for it, and said, in fact, he did everything basically, with good faith and, in his view, by the book.
Well, in fact, he wrote a book on ethical leadership that portrayed himself as sort of the ultimate model of ethical leadership. Many of us disagreed with that. I've been a critic of Comey for a long time. We have to see what evidence there still is here. There's legitimate grounds for concern for people about a political opponent. But this is a very direct and focused indictment, and somebody is lying.
It's not a sprawling indictment. It's very, very specific, which I think is a lot smarter than doing any kind of long, windy indictment. Jonathan, thank you very much.
Hey, Sean Hannity.
So, ladies and gentlemen, the DOJ will hopefully, I think likely, gain another victory, even if the perjury case is completely tossed out, which it isn't completely tossed out because they're appealing right now. You're going to have a year of indictments in 2026 anyway. God bless you all. See you all tomorrow. I should have a live stream about 11 or 12 p.m. Eastern time.